Hello everyone, welcome to another lecture from Biosite. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about life processes. So this is a chapter from class 10 biology, CBSE. So let's discuss what are life processes. So the living beings perform maintenance activities even when they are resting or asleep. So there has to be certain processes which happens in the body of an living organism to maintain the survival of the living organism. So when you see the definition, the process which together perform this maintenance job in the living organism are called as life processes. So visible movements alone cannot define what is life. Plant may grow without obvious movements, an animal may breathe without visible movements. So movements also occur at very small scales. Molecules are constantly moving inside the living organisms, even the organism is at rest or in active mode. So when you see the living organisms are highly organized structures so that environmental effects can damage the organization. So the living organism must continuously repair and maintain their structure. So, because living structures are made of molecules, molecular movement is necessary for maintenance. So, this maintenance activity was done by these life processes. So, life process, when you see the definition, the life processes are the processes which together perform the maintenance job of living organism. So, in order to maintain this life processes or the survival of living organism, there must be an energy need. Why is energy needed for the maintenance? So maintenance process require energy because they prevent damage and breakdown of the body's organized structure. So without energy, no life process can happen in the organism. So this energy comes from the outside of the organism and must be transferred inside through food. And this process is called nutrition. So the process of intake of food to attain energy is called as nutrition, and different kind of organisms has different mode of nutrition. And growing organism need additional raw materials from outside to build a new body material. So the in order to attain energy, there must be food source, and most of the food sources are carbon based, and the organism use different nutritional processes depending on the complexity of their carbon sources. So one life process which happen in the body for the attainment of energy and the maintenance of organism is respiration. So the food sources must be broken down or built up and get converted into an uniform source of energy usable for the molecular movement and growth. So oxidizing reducing reactions are common chemical means of breaking down of molecule. So many organisms use oxygen from outside. Acquiring oxygen is used to break down food for cellular needs is called respiration. So the respiration itself is the breakdown of molecules by oxidation and to generate energy. So in respiration, the oxygen will be taken by the living organism. So when the food get oxidized, say for example the glucose, upon oxidation will release energy. So this energy will be utilized by the organism for its cellular activities and life processes. So this is how respiration is essential for the attainment of energy. The second one is transportation. So this kind, the whatever energy we have attained through the food, and the food will be broken down by oxidation in respiration, and this source of energy which actually got from respiration process will be utilized by the other metabolic processes in the body. So the transportation and excretion in single celled organisms, the whole surface is in contact with the environment. So the special organs for taking in food, exchange of gases, or removing of waste may not be needed. So single celled organisms are nothing but the unicellular organisms. So in unicellular organism, the cell itself act as an entire organism's body. So this whole cell will will in contact with the environment. So there will be no need of the special organs for the transportation and excretion. So the every life processes will be occur through the single cell. But in case of multicellular organism, there will be presence of many cells, and those are not directly in contact with the surrounding environment. So simple diffusion cannot meet the requirement of all cells. So the simple diffusion actually happens in the single cellular organisms. In case of multicellular organisms, simple diffusion is not possible. So the specialized tissues take up food and oxygen, so a transport system is needed to carry them from one place to another place. So in case of multicellular organism, we need a transport system, and the chemical reactions produce byproducts that may be useless or harmful. And so for every life processes, there will be some byproducts which are useless or harmful, so they must be removed out of the body, and this process is known as excretion. So in case of multicellular organism, there are specialized excretory tissues and organs in order to carry the waste away from the cell. So in case of unicellular organisms, so the single cell will take up all the process like transportation and excretion. So this is about transportation and excretion. So we will discuss in detail in upcoming lectures. So let's see nutrition. What is nutrition? So I have mentioned that in order to carry out the life processes, the organism needs certain amount of energy for each and every life processes, and this energy will be obtained by the intake of food, and the mode of intake of food is known as a nutrition. So energy is needed even when we are not doing an obvious activity because it maintains the organized state of the body. Materials from outside are also needed to grow, develop, and synthesize proteins and other substances. The food we eat is the source of energy and materials. So how do living things get their food actually? So the all organisms need energy and materials, but they obtain in different ways. So that's why each and every organism has a different mode of nutrition. So autotrophs. So the mode of nutrition will be first one is autotrophic nutrition. So the organisms which exhibit this autotrophic nutrition are known as autotrophs. So these autotrophs use simple food materials obtained from the inorganic sources such as carbon dioxide and water. So green plants and some bacteria are autotrophs. So the green plants, as we all know, that utilize the carbon dioxide and water and make up their own food. And other organisms use complex substances which must be broken down into simpler ones before they can be used for their growth. And so enzymes, there will be presence of enzymes which act as biocatalyst to help in breaking of the food in the food breakdown. So another mode of nutrition is heterotrophic nutrition, and it will be exhibited by the heterotrophs, and this directly or indirectly depends upon the autotrophs. Animals and fungi are the examples for this heterotrophs. So remember that autotrophs use simple inorganic raw materials, whereas heterotrophs use complex food depending depends directly or indirectly on autotrophs. And enzymes, biocatalysts are also involved in breaking up of complex substances into simpler ones so that the energy will be generated. Let's see what is autotrophic nutrition. The carbon and energy requirements of autotrophs are fulfilled by the photosynthesis. The photosynthesis is nothing but is the process in which autotrophs take substances from outside and convert them into stored forms of energy, and carbon dioxide and waters are the raw materials and get converted into carbon dioxide in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. So this process is known as photosynthesis, and the carbohydrates will provide the energy to the plant body. And carbohydrates are not used immediately. So the stored form of carbohydrate in plant is starch, and it acts as an internal energy reserve. In humans, some energy derived from food in the body in the form of glycogen. So the stored form of energy in case of plant is stored form of food in case of plant is starch, and in case of animals it is glycogen. So when you see the photosynthetic equation, we have 6CO2 plus 12H2O in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. So gives rise to C6H12O6 plus 6H2O plus 6O2. So this is the photosynthetic equation where the plant take up carbon dioxide and water as a raw material in presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll pigment is present in the chloroplast. So this substances will be broken down into carbohydrates. The example will be C6H12O6, which is glucose. So the CO2 is reduced into the carbohydrate, and we have again water and oxygen as byproducts. So this oxygen evolve and will be taken up by the other living organisms on the planet. So, what are the events during photosynthesis? Let's see briefly. One is absorption of the light energy by the chlorophyll. So, the light energy will be converted into chemical energy by the chlorophyll. Yes. So, the conversion of light energy into chemical energy and the splitting of water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen will be done in the second most event, and the CO2 will be reduced into carbohydrates, which is a stored form like as starch in case of plants. So these steps need not occur one after the another immediately. Desert plant may take up carbon dioxide at night and prepare an intermediate which is acted upon by energy absorbed by chlorophyll during the daytime. So the events will be different, occurs in different steps or in different timings depending upon the type of plant and their habitat. Let's see why chlorophyll is necessary for the photosynthesis. So when you see the leaf cross section, if this is the leaf having the following parts, which is the upper epidermis, which is visible to us, and lower epidermis. So in between these we have the chloroplast, in the mesophyll region, and in the chloroplast we have, this is the chloroplast, and in the chloroplast we have pigment known as chlorophyll, which is very essential for the trapping of light energy and the conversion of light energy into chemical energy, and we have certain air spaces in the leaves. So let's see some tests for photosynthesis. So the byproducts of photosynthesis obviously carbohydrates like starch. Let's see whether the leaf undergo, in which conditions does the leaf or the plant undergoes photosynthesis. So for this experiment is known as variegated leaf experiment. So for this you have to take a potted plant with variegated leaves, for example money plant. So keep the plant in a dark room for 3 days so that all the starch gets used up. So basically when the plant uh, don't have the conditions to carry out the photosynthesis, like the light is at most essential for the photosynthesis process. If the plant is not getting enough light for this process, so already the food which is stored in the body in the form of starch will get utilized. So in case of animals also, when the animal is on starvation, the glycogen which is stored in the tissues will get converted into glucose and the glucose will get utilized in case of starved conditions. So similarly, when the plant could not uh, carry out the photosynthesis process due to the lack of raw materials, so it will utilize the stored form of carbohydrate for its survival. So after that, keep the plant in sunlight for about 6 hours. Keep the plant in a dark room for 3 days so that all the starch get utilized. So after that, keep the plant in sunlight for about 6 hours. So pluck a leaf from the plant and mark the green areas and trace them on a sheet of paper. So dip the leaf in boiling water for a few minutes. So why do we need to boil keep the leaf in the boiling water? So immerse it in a beaker containing alcohol. Place the beaker in a water bath and heat until the alcohol begins to boil. So this boiling steps and dipping in alcohol is necessary for the sterilization, and also we need to remove the greenish color from the leaf. So that's why these steps are important, because we need to experiment this leaf by adding dilute iodine solution. So it is important to remove the green coloration from the leaf. So after the boiling and immersing it in a beaker of alcohol, and we have to place the beaker in a water bath and heat until the alcohol begins to boil. So after that you have to observe the color of the leaf and the color of the solution. So after that, remove the leaf and dip the leaf in dilute iodine solution for few minutes. After that, remove the leaf and rinse off the iodine solution. So the washing steps are utmost important. Remove the leaf and rinse off the iodine solution and compare the color of the leaf with the tracing made at the beginning. So let's understand in detail. So this is the diagrams of variegated leaf experiment. So this is the leaf which is in greenish color. So you have to mark the green portions on the leaf. So after all the markings, you have to treat this leaf with boiling water. After that, you have to immerse this leaf in the iodine solution in order to remove the greenish color. So the markings are already present. After that, you have to dip this leaf, which used to having the greenish spots in the iodine solution. After a few minutes, you can observe the blue coloration on the leaf. So this blue coloration on the leaf represents the presence of starch. So the presence of starch indicates that the photosynthesis happened in the leaf. So we can say that starch is formed. The carbohydrates are formed in the presence of light so that the photosynthesis was carried out. So hence the light is necessary for the photosynthesis, and the starch is formed in the photosynthesis. So this is the variegated leaf experiment. So this is the leaf before the iodine test and this is the leaf after the iodine test. So yes. So what are the raw materials required by the plants? So we know that water used in photosynthesis is taken up from the soil by the roots of terrestrial plants, and plant also need nitrogen, phosphorus, iron and magnesium, which is already present in the soil. And nitrogen is an essential element used in the synthesis of proteins and other compounds. So basically this nitrogen is utmost important for the synthesis of amino acids. So these amino acids all together will form a protein. So that's why they concluded that amino acids are crucial for the synthesis of proteins and other compounds. So the nitrogen may be taken up as inorganic nitrates or nitrites, or as organic compounds prepared by bacteria from atmospheric nitrogen. So this case of nitrogenic forms we can observe in case of nitrogen cycle. Let's see the activity of stomata, how the stomata is important in gaseous exchange. So what are stomata? Stomata are the tiny pores present on the surface of leaves. So large amount of gaseous exchange takes place through stomata for photosynthesis. Gas exchange also occurs across the surface of stems, roots and leaves. Since large amount of water can be lost through the stomata, plant close these pores when carbon dioxide is not needed for the photosynthesis. So there will be a water loss through this stomata. That's why the plant tend to close their stomatal pores when photosynthesis is need not to be performed. So opening and closing of stomatal pore is controlled by the cells called guard cells, and guard cells swell when water flows into them, causing the stomatal pore to open. When guard cells shrink, the pore closes. So let's see this. So these are the stomatal structure. The stomata consists of the outermost cells called guard cells, and this is the chloroplast, and we have this opening called as a stomatal pore. So when there is a excess or the absorption of water into the cells, the guard cells will pick up this water. The water will enter into the guard cells and making them to bulge out like this. So we can see this is the bulging of the guard cells leads to the opening of the stomata. So in case of there is no requirement of photosynthesis, so there will be no need of carbon dioxide and water. So the gradually the guard cells will be shrink like this, leads to the closing of stomatal pore. Yes. So why do carbon dioxide is needed? Let's see by an experiment. So for this you have to take two healthy potted plants which are nearly the same size. Keep them in a dark room for 3 days. Place each plant on a separate glass. Place the each plant in separate glass plate. Put a watch glass containing potassium hydroxide beside one plant. So the potassium hydroxide is used to absorb the carbon dioxide, and we have to cover both the plants with separate bell jars. Use Vaseline to seal the bottoms of the jars to the glass plate so that the setup is airtight. Keep the plant in sunlight for about 2 hours. Pluck a leaf from each plant and check for starch. As in activity 5.1, compare the amount of starch in two leaves. See, first of all, you need to take two potted plants, and we have to keep the two potted plants in the dark room for 3 days. So there will be no photosynthesis, and after that place each plant on a separate glass plate. I put a watch glass containing potassium hydroxide beside one plant, and potassium hydroxide is used to absorb the carbon dioxide. That's why we need to add place a potassium hydroxide plate beside the watch glass. So we have to cover both plants again with separate bell jars and use Vaseline to seal the bottoms of the jar to the glass plates so the setup is airtight. So again keep the plants in sunlight for about 2 hours. Pluck a leaf from each plant and check for starch. So the experiment is designed to show the importance of carbon dioxide in photosynthesis. The plant deprived of CO2 should not form the starch normally. So we made the potted plants without any carbon dioxide, right? So there will be no carbon dioxide as we place them near the potassium hydroxide solution, so that potassium hydroxide solution will be absorbed, CO2 will be absorbed by the potassium hydroxide solution. So after that, even though you kept those plants in the light for few hours, after though you after that, if you check the plant leaf, uh, if you perform the iodine test with the leaf of the plant, there will be no starch formation. Why? Because there is no photosynthesis happen. Even though the light is available, the CO2 is not available. So without, until unless the CO2 is available, the plant will not able to form the carbon dioxide, because the carbon dioxide are formed by the reduction of CO2. So the CO2 are reduced into the carbon dioxide. So even though the light is available, if there is no carbohydrates, the photosynthesis won't be happened. So the all the raw materials must be present for the process of photosynthesis. This is the conclusion. So let's see what is heterotrophic nutrition. Each organism is adapted to its environment, so the form of nutrition differs according to the type and availability of food. So whether the food source is stationary such as grass, mobile such as a deer, affects how food is accessed and what nutritional apparatus are used. Some organisms break down food outside the body and then absorb it. This is one mode of nutrition. Bread molds, yeast, and mushrooms are the examples of this mode of nutrition, where they broke down the food outside the body and consume it later. Well, in case of other organisms, take food in whole and break it down inside their bodies. So what can be taken in and broken down depends on the body design and function. This is the utmost important point. Again, the catabolism will be depend upon the body design, number of cells, and functioning of the organism. Some organisms derive nutrition from plants or animals without killing them. So this mode of nutrition is known as parasitic strategy, used by Cuscuta, ticks, lice, leeches, and tapeworms. So there will be three strategies of heterotrophic nutrition. One is digestion outside the body, later down absorption, example will be fungi, or else food taken in whole, after that digestion will be happen. Parasitic nutrition, where the organism obtains the food from a living host. So these are the three strategies for the heterotrophic nutrition. So how do the organism obtain the food? Food and the way it is obtained differ among the organisms, so the digestive systems also differ. So in case of unicellular organism, there is no such kind of digestive, well advanced digestive system. So in single celled organisms, the food may be taken in through the entire surface, as we have discussed earlier. As organism becomes more complex, different body parts become specialized for different functions. So let's see the mode of nutrition which will be owned by the amoeba in case of food ingestion. So amoeba takes in food using temporary finger-like extensions of its surface called pseudopodia. And the pseudopodia finger-like projections fuse around a food particle and form a food vacuole. Inside the food vacuole, complex substances are broken down into simpler ones, and the simpler substances then diffuse into the cytoplasm, and undigested material moves to the cell surface and is thrown out. So let's see in diagrammatic representation. So So this is the structure. So this is the structure of an amoeba. It's having nucleus. So this is the amoeba having nucleus. So if the amoeba found any food particle around its environment, yeah. So there will be a finger-like projections of amoeba like this. These are known as pseudopodia. The finger-like projections of the amoeba are known as pseudopodia. So these food particles are gradually engulfed by the amoeba through its extensions. So here this is the food particle. After that, there is a food vacuole in the body of an amoeba. So this is the food vacuole. So inside the food vacuole, the food will be broken down into small pieces due to the action of some enzymes which are present in the food vacuole. So this digested food, the broken food will be distributed to the entire body's surface like this. So this is the mode of nutrition in case of amoeba, and whatever the undigested matter present will be excreted out through this single cell only. So this is the mode of nutrition in case of amoeba, which is carried out by simple finger-like projections called pseudopodia and by food vacuole. So there will be no specialized organs in case of amoeba. So in case of paramecium also, it is also a unicellular organism, but it has a definite shape. Food is taken it at a specific spot, and food is moved to this spot by the movement of cilia, which covers the entire surface of the body. So when you compare the amoeba and paramecium, amoeba has a fixed flexible shape and pseudopodia surround the food, where in case of paramecium it has a different shape, and a cilia move the food to a specific feeding spot. So in these two organisms, there will be no well specialized organ systems for the digestion and uptake of food. Simply, as these are the unicellular, the food will be taken by the simpler structures. So let's remember the points. What is life process? Life processes are maintenance process that keep the organized structure of a living organism. And energy raw materials come from outside of the organism, and the nutrition brings food, energy and materials into the organism. So respiration involves the acquiring oxygen, use it to break down the food for cellular activities, and multicellular organism need transport because all cells cannot directly contact with the environment. Excretion removes the harmful byproducts of chemical reactions. Autotrophs include green plants and some bacteria. Heterotrophs includes animal and fungi. Photosynthesis use carbon dioxide and water in presence of sunlight and chlorophyll to form carbohydrates. And chlorophyll absorbs sunlight energy, water is split, and carbon dioxide is reduced to carbohydrates. Starch is a stored form of carbohydrate in plants, and stomatal pores are controlled by the guard cells and are important for the gaseous exchange. Plants require water and mineral nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and iron and magnesium. Heterotrophic strategies include external digestion, absorption, ingestion and internal digestion, and parasitism. So these are the main points of the today's lecture. So I hope you understand this lecture from life processes. Thank you.